I think any prime minister must be the prime minister of the whole country. And certainly when I've been traveling up and down the country, people do talk to me about feeling forgotten and overlooked, and that everything being about London. And I do get that. And so I think, having a PM who spends a lot of his time in the north is a good thing. But of course, if you spend your time in the northwest, then the northeast may feel left out, or Cornwall may feel left out, or the east of England. We're only a relatively small country, but I do think that we have very little. Everything does seem to be centred in London, but it's difficult to just fix it by spending perhaps a lot more time in another city.
The British government is considering whether to put sanctions on Israeli settlements after the Israeli government put out tenders for settlements in the so-called E1 area of the West Bank, the area which under the 1967 borders allows Palestine to maintain East Jerusalem as its capital. The E1 plan would see the area of the West Bank and East Jerusalem separated. The Foreign Secretary, Ed Miliband, condemned the plan in strong terms, saying all settlements are a flagrant breach of international law, and he pledged that the UK will not stand back and accept the destruction of the two-state solution. So what more could the UK government do? I spoke this weekend to Dame Emily Thornberry MP. She is the chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee in Westminster, and I began by asking her whether there is more that the UK government could do beyond statements.
Yeah. My committee a year ago called for there to be a complete ban on trade with the settlements. And that's a cross-party group of parliamentarians. We said that the government should look at the United Nations list of businesses that are trading with the occupied territories. We need to be much more forceful and essentially ban trade. And actually, since then, since the Israelis have gone ahead with the putting out tenders for E1, and just so that listeners know, I mean, obviously the Palestinians are not going anywhere, the Israelis are not going anywhere. What do? The international community have agreed unanimously that the answer is for there to be a land for the Palestinians and a land for the Israelis. But this far-right government is essentially building settlements as fast as it possibly can do in Palestinian territory in order to snuff out any chance of a Palestinian state. And it's deliberate. And the E1 bit is important because it is the last piece in the jigsaw. It kind of cuts Palestine in half and separates it from Jerusalem. And they're trying to make sure they've got the tenders out before the elections in October, which will be much more difficult to go back on once the tenders have been signed. So I think that we should have taken action a long time ago, but we most definitely need to take action now. We need to do it with our allies, and we need to stop trade with the Palestinian territories that are occupied by the Israelis and be much clearer about it. But I think we should go further, and we should say not only should it be about trade in goods, but we should also stop any funding, any finance going into the settlements. No money should pass through Britain. No British money should be used for the building of settlements or the support of settlements which are illegal.
Is there a great deal of trade, frankly, with the occupied territories? And what evidence is there of British money going into the building of the settlement?
Well, there was a property show recently in London, people selling property internationally, which included settlements. So, I mean, it does happen. And I mean, exactly how much there is difficult to know. We ask the Foreign Office this, and it's all part of their answer, which is, oh, well, this is all very difficult. But I have to say that given that we have a trade agreement with Israel, where we give Israel preferential trade, but not the settlements. So in those circumstances, we do seem to know the difference between the settlements and the rest of Israel. So if we can do that for trade, then we should be able to stop trading with the settlements. I do think that not enough focus has been put on this. When Crimea was invaded, we stopped all trade with Crimea, but we continued to trade with Russia. We have in the past been able to work out what's an occupied territory and what is not, and not trade with illegally occupied territories. We need to do that again.
As you know, Israeli members of the Israeli government are saying, look, this is our opportunity to, as you put it, snuff out any chances of a Palestinian state. They're quite overt about this, and they talk about all the territory as being, quotes, Israel or not even Greater Israel. They just assign right to it. I mean, I hear what you're saying. I hear what the world community is saying about a two-state solution, but haven't we, in practice, gone beyond that point of it being practical, because Israel has asserted its might and its force, and the world has wrung its hands, but it hasn't stopped it.
Yeah, I mean, the foreign minister, for example, has said that Israelis have as much right to live in the West Bank as Brits do to live in London. I mean, they're as overt about it as possible. But it is a democracy. There is an election happening in October. And Israel is a divided country. This far-right government does not represent all of Israelis, and they are behind in the polls. So it is all to play for. But we could have a different government. It may not be as completely liberal-minded when it comes to the Palestinians as we would want, but it'll certainly be better than the current one, where you have members of the current government. Ben-Gvir, I think, has said that the Israeli Defense Force should be killing between 30 and 40 Palestinians a day. They are not even people. They have no right to exist. He's toured a prison that he's establishing where there will be gallows, where he says that they can hang Palestinians, but they won't be hanging Israelis. I mean, it is difficult to overstate how extreme this government is. And the Prime Minister of Israel seems to have no control over these far-right members of his cabinet. And they are being pushed further and further to the right, and they're playing to their base in advance of the election. And the international community cannot be pusillanimous at this time. We have to be muscular. We have to stand up to them, and we must act with international partners and be not just, as you say, wring our hands. We have to be completely clear. This is illegal. We all agree there has to be a Palestinian state. And you know what? What I always say to Israeli politicians when I meet them is, how do you see Israel in 10 years' time? Because if you want to be a largely Jewish democracy, how is that going to work if you have all the land between the Mediterranean and the Jordan River? Because there will be more Palestinians than you. You will not be a largely Jewish democracy. The Palestinians are not going anywhere. So what's the answer? The answer is that there should be two states, and you cannot snuff it out. We will not let you.
But can you see any possible Israeli government emerging that would actually forcibly move settlements or prevent their construction?
Well, I mean, it has happened in the past. If you look at Algeria, for example, there were whole French villages that were built that no longer have very many French people living in them. I mean, if those properties are now built, and there will need to be some sort of land swaps. It won't necessarily be exactly the 67 border, but we must not give up on this.
I mean, you are, if I can, it's not being rude to say you're a North London lawyer.
It's accurate. I mean, I've been an MP for 20 years, but once you're a lawyer, you're always a lawyer. I know that.
And you represent North London constituency. I mean, how do you feel about the kind of vilification of North London lawyers and the expense of building up a number 10 North and Manchesterism and the rest of it?
Well, I mean, I think any prime minister must be the prime minister of the whole country. And certainly when I've been traveling up and down the country, people do talk to me about feeling forgotten and overlooked, and that everything being about London. And I do get that. And so I think having a PM who spends a lot of his time in the north is a good thing. But of course, if you spend your time in the northwest, then the northeast may feel left out, or Cornwall may feel left out, or the east of England. We're only a relatively small country, but I do think that we have very little. Everything does seem to be centred in London, but it's difficult to just fix it by spending perhaps a lot more time in another city. But it's the first step, I suppose.
When you know how government works, do you think it makes sense to divide it between two centres, which appears to be the idea, Treasury in London and growth in Manchester.
Well, I mean, there have been attempts to do this over many years. You've seen government departments, having parts of their department in Wales or in Darlington or in Scotland. I mean, this happens all the time. There's nothing wrong with it in principle, particularly in today's age when communications are so easy. So I don't have a problem with it. I don't have a problem with it at all. And as I say, my experience is that you do find people in the UK feeling that everything is about London and a resentment of it. I am a London MP. I have a great pride in my city. And there are times when I think people forget that in my particular constituency, for example, 40% of my children are entitled to free school meals because there's a level of poverty and deprivation in London that other people from around the rest of the country don't necessarily realise. I myself was brought up on a council estate in Guildford. People don't think there are poor in Guildford. There are. Do
you think you'd fancy a run for mayor if sort of Sir Sadiq Khan or Lord Khan decides to stand aside?
No, I am. It's the honour of my life to represent Islington South and Finsbury. They are a fantastic constituency, and I don't want to give that up. And I find being chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee immensely stimulating and quite influential. I mean, I'm hoping that the things I'm calling for today, we may find in the next month or two the government will do. I am going to keep pressing and keep hoping that we can influence the government to go in the right direction.
I mean, your role outside the government in both Keir Starmer and the case of Andy Burnham is clearly an important one, but in a sense it puts you as a sort of Labour observer of what's gone on.
Yeah.
I mean, what is your feeling? Was it necessary to change the Prime Minister, and has it been the right thing to do?
I think that we had got to the stage where the Prime Minister was so unpopular that he couldn't recover. And the difficulty for Labour, obviously for any political party, is without power, we're not really anything. And we needed to have 2 terms in office. And if we're led by somebody who is so unpopular that he was a sort of drag on the ticket almost, that we would be less likely to be re-elected and be able to finish our programme of change of the country for the better, then we had to be hard-headed about it. I didn't expect it to happen so quickly. I expected it to happen in a year, and not as quickly as it did. But, we are where we are. And I mean, I think it's unfortunate. I feel sorry for Keir. He's a good man. I think that he didn't really necessarily understand the business of politics. There's a lot of dirty business with politics, but there's also a lot of skill. And I think he was a skilled lawyer, but he hadn't really kind of quite got it when it came to politics. And so he relied on other people too much and didn't realise, the sorts of things that he needed to do in order to keep people on board. So, I mean, I could talk for some time as to what my analysis of what went wrong, but the point is it went wrong and it wasn't recoverable from. So we probably needed to change leader. The only thing that kind of surprised me was how hard-headed the Labour Party was about it. We're a party that's quite emotional, I think, and can be quite sentimental and can take quite a long time to change leaders quite often. So I was very surprised that we moved as fast as we did.
Well, maybe that's down to the internet.
I don't know what it's down to, but or maybe it's just that the Labour Party have learned that it is important if you're a party of power to take it seriously.
Are you? I mean, your neighbouring constituency, fellow lawyer. Are you someone who talks to Keir quite a lot, or not?
No, not very much. Not very much. I mean, I think that was one of the problems in a way, is that increasingly he didn't necessarily talk to people outside of a tight inner circle, and that had a number of problems as a result of it. Not least, you need to hear from a range of voices in order to make sure that you make the correct decisions. And I think that if you tighten your group too much, then you don't get the advice you need or the challenge you need.
I mean, Nick Thomas-Symonds, who also left the government, supporter of Keir Starmer, I mean, he actually says when you look back on the 2 years of government under Keir Starmer, it will be a government of achievement.
Oh yeah.
Would you agree?
No, definitely. Of course, there have been achievements, without a doubt, without a doubt. And I have to say, when we do get the eventual meeting with the European Union in the next month or two, and there will be a number of agreements that will happen. Many of them, the work for that was done by Nick Thomas Simmons, and he won't be there to sign the agreement, which is, that's politics. It is a team sport, but he will have done the heavy lifting, and I don't think that will be acknowledged enough.
As ever, divided comments coming in on Emily Thornberry's thought on Israel-Palestine. Andrew says, who murdered who on October the 7th? All one-sided from Emily Thornberry. However, we also hear from Amanda, who says, so in 2014 we stopped trading with Russian Crimea and we knew that Russia was the invader. Why didn't we stop trading with the invader as well as their victims? Frank says, please challenge the ridiculous false equivalence Thornberry and the Greens make between Russia and Israel. On the other hand, P says no taxpayers' money should be paid to Israel for anything at all. Rob says, blimey, I never thought I'd agree with Emily Thornberry. And we also have Martina saying, I wish Emily Thornberry was our Prime Minister. Starmer blocked her from the Cabinet. Was he feeling threatened? What a loss to the country. Well, thanks for all those comments.